The conference room was silent except for the soft rustle of papers as the attorney adjusted his reading glasses. My former business partner's widow sat across from me. Her lips curved in that same confident smile I'd seen 12 years ago when she testified against me in court. Next to her, their daughter Jennifer kept glancing at her phone, clearly bored by what she assumed would be a formality. "Mr. Morrison," the attorney began, looking at me over his glasses. "Thank you for coming today. I know this must be difficult." Difficult didn't begin to cover it. The last time I'd been in this building was for my sentencing hearing. Federal courthouse, downtown Seattle. I'd walked out in handcuffs, while David stood beside his wife, his face a mask of righteous indignation. My former partner, my former friend. The man who just died of a heart attack at 63, leaving behind a tech empire worth $350 million. Before we begin the reading of David Chen's will, the attorney continued, I need to inform everyone present that Mr. Chen left specific instructions for this meeting. There are some recorded statements he wanted played first. Elizabeth Chen, David's widow, shifted in her seat. Is this really necessary? David and I discussed his wishes thoroughly before he passed. I'm afraid it is, Mrs. Chen. These instructions were added to the will 3 months before Mr. Chen's death, and they supersede any previous discussions. I watched Elizabeth's smile falter slightly. Good. Let her feel a fraction of the uncertainty I'd lived with for over a decade. The attorney pressed play on his laptop, and David's voice filled the room. He sounded tired, older than I remembered. I hadn't heard his voice in 12 years. Not since he'd stood in that courtroom and told the jury how I'd betrayed our company, our employees, our investors. To those hearing this, David's recorded voice began, If you're listening, then I'm gone. And it's time I told the truth about what really happened at TechVantage Solutions in 2012. Elizabeth's face went pale. Jennifer finally looked up from her phone. Thomas Morrison did not embezzle $47 million from our company. I did. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. I'd waited 12 years to hear someone besides me say those words out loud. Let me back up. Let me tell you how a 20-year friendship turned into a 12-year prison sentence. I met David Chen in 1995 at a tech conference in San Francisco. We were both junior developers, both hungry, both convinced we could build something revolutionary. By 1998, we'd founded TechVantage Solutions in my garage in Redmond. Our vision was simple. Enterprise software that actually worked the way businesses needed it to work, not the way programmers thought it should work. For 14 years, we built that company together. Equal partners, 50-50 split on everything. We survived the dot-com crash, the 2008 recession, countless product pivots, and near bankruptcies. By 2012, TechVantage was valued at $400 million. We had contracts with Fortune 500 companies. We were planning an IPO. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there. David started staying late at the office more often. He became secretive about certain financial meetings, telling me they were just routine audits or investor check-ins. He insisted on handling the pre-IPO financial documentation personally, saying he didn't want to burden me with the tedious paperwork. I was too focused on the product development side to question it. That was my mistake. My wife Karen saw it before I did. Something's wrong with David, she told me one night in March 2012. We were in our kitchen in Bellevue, the house we'd finally been able to afford after years of startup struggles. He's different, evasive. He's stressed about the IPO, I'd said, dismissing her concerns. We all are. No, Thomas. It's more than that. The way he looks at you now, there's something calculating in it. I should have listened to her. The call came on a Tuesday morning, April 17th, 2012. I was in my home office reviewing code when my phone rang. It was Marcus Webb, our corporate attorney. Thomas, we need to talk. Now. Don't go to the office. Meet me at my firm in an hour. My stomach dropped. Marcus, what's wrong? I can't discuss it over the phone. 1 hour. Don't talk to anyone, especially not David. I drove to downtown Seattle in a daze. Marcus met me in a small conference room, his face grim. He slid a folder across the table. The SEC contacted me this morning. They've been investigating TechVantage for the past 6 months. There's evidence of massive financial fraud, fund diversion, falsified investor reports, embezzlement. The documents swam before my eyes. Wire transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts, all bearing my electronic signature. Marcus, I didn't do any of this. I never authorized these transfers. These aren't my accounts. I know, Thomas. But here's the problem: all the evidence points to you. Your login credentials, your authorization codes, your digital signatures on every document. It has to be David. He has access to all my credentials. We set it up that way years ago for operational efficiency. Either of us could approve transactions if the other wasn't available. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Can you prove that? That's when I realized how thoroughly I'd been set up. Every security protocol we'd implemented, every failsafe meant to protect the company David had used them to frame me perfectly. The next 48 hours were a nightmare. Federal agents raided our offices. They seized computers, files, financial records. News vans camped outside our headquarters. Our stock price, which had been climbing steadily toward the IPO, went into freefall. I called Karen from my lawyer's office. They're going to arrest me tomorrow. I'm so sorry. She was crying. We'll fight this. We'll prove you didn't do it. But how? Every piece of evidence screamed my guilt. And David stood in front of the cameras looking devastated and betrayed. I trusted him, he told reporters. We all did. This is heartbreaking. The prosecution offered me a deal 3 weeks later. Plead guilty to reduced charges, serve 8 to 10 years, pay restitution, and they wouldn't go after Karen or our assets. They claimed she must have known about the embezzlement, must have benefited from the stolen funds. I sat in that cold interrogation room and thought about my wife. 23 years of marriage. She'd believed in me when TechVantage was just a crazy idea. She'd supported us through the lean years. She didn't deserve to have her life destroyed because David had decided to steal and frame me for it. Marcus advised me to fight it. We can win this, Thomas. It'll be expensive, and it'll take years. But we can prove reasonable doubt. How many years? 3, maybe 4 until trial, then appeals if necessary. I thought about Karen sitting in a courtroom for 3 years, watching me be dragged through the mud. I thought about the mounting legal bills that would consume everything we'd built. I thought about the stress, the uncertainty, the constant fear that they might still go after her, despite my fight. What if I take the deal? Marcus looked at me like I was insane. Thomas, you'd be admitting to a crime you didn't commit. You'd go to prison for a decade. Your professional reputation would be destroyed. You'd lose your CPA license, your ability to work in finance or tech ever again. But Karen would be safe. They'd leave her alone. That's what they're offering. Yes. I called Karen that night. We talked until 3 in the morning. She begged me to fight it, but I could hear the fear in her voice every time she mentioned the possibility of being charged herself. I can't let them do that to you, I told her. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did you. I know. But I can survive prison. I don't know if I can survive watching them prosecute you for my supposed crimes. There was a long silence on the line. Then Karen said quietly, If you do this, I want a divorce. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? If you're going to sacrifice yourself, I need to make sure they can't touch me or our assets. We divorce before you plead guilty. I take the house, the savings, everything. That way there's no question of me being complicit. And when you get out, we start over. It was the most pragmatic, strategic, and loving thing she could have said. That's how I knew I was making the right choice. I took the deal in June 2012, pleaded guilty to embezzlement, wire fraud, and securities fraud. The judge gave me 12 years. Karen filed for divorce the same day. The proceedings were brutal. She had to publicly denounce me, claim she'd been deceived, paint me as a monster who'd hidden his crimes from her. Every word was a knife in my heart, but I understood why it had to be that way. David attended my sentencing. He sat in the gallery with his wife Elizabeth, watching as I was led away in handcuffs. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt? Regret? I couldn't tell. Then it was gone, replaced by that mask of righteous disappointment. Federal prison in Sheridan, Oregon became my home. Minimum security. Thankfully, white-collar criminals don't get sent to maximum. But prison is prison. The loss of freedom, the constant noise, the knowledge that the outside world is moving on without you. Karen wrote to me every week for the first 2 years. Her letters were careful, coded. We both knew they might be read. She told me about her new job as an insurance adjuster, about selling the house in Bellevue and moving to a modest apartment in Tacoma, about slowly rebuilding a normal life. Then the letters stopped. I didn't blame her. I'd told her to move on. 3 years of waiting for a convicted felon was enough. I assumed she'd met someone else, started over properly. It hurt, but I wanted her to be happy. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that David had made his own move. 6 months after I went to prison, he'd shown up at Karen's apartment with flowers and apologies. "I'm so sorry for what Thomas did to you," he'd said. "If you ever need anything, I'm here." It took him another year to convince her to have coffee with him. Then dinner, then more. David was patient. He was kind. He was attentive. Everything I hadn't been able to be while I was working 80-hour weeks to build our company. They were married by 2015. I found out through the prison grapevine another inmate's wife had seen the announcement in the Seattle Times Society pages. David Chen, CEO of TechVantage Solutions, marries Karen Morrison, his former partner's ex-wife. The betrayal was complete. He'd taken my company, my freedom, my reputation, and now my wife. I wish I could say I raged, threw things, fell apart. But the truth is, I just felt numb, empty. What was the point of anger when there was nothing I could do? I was serving a 12-year sentence for crimes I didn't commit, and the man who'd framed me was living my life. The years crawled by. I worked in the prison library, took classes, read everything I could get my hands on, taught myself meditation to deal with the constant anger simmering beneath the surface. Made a few friends, other white-collar criminals who maintained their innocence. We formed a dark sort of club. TechVantage went public in 2016 without me. The IPO was successful. David became a tech celebrity, featured in Forbes, invited to speak at conferences, hailed as a visionary who'd saved his company from criminal leadership. The final valuation was $350 million. I was released early in December 2023 for good behavior. 11 years and 7 months. I walked out of Sheridan prison with $200 in my pocket, a bus ticket to Seattle, and absolutely no idea what to do with the rest of my life. The world had changed. Technology had evolved. I was 64 years old with a felony record. My CPA license was long gone. My professional network had vanished. I found a small studio apartment in Tacoma, the kind of place with thin walls and broken elevators. Got a job as a night security guard at a warehouse. It paid $13 an hour. From tech CEO to overnight security guard. The fall was complete. I hadn't heard Karen's voice in almost 12 years when she called me in February 2024. I was sitting in my apartment, eating microwaved ramen, when my phone rang with an unknown number. "Thomas?" My heart stopped. "Karen? I need to see you. Can we meet?" We met at a coffee shop in Federal Way, halfway between her house, David's house, and my apartment. She looked different. Older, obviously. More polished. Her clothes were expensive, but her eyes were the same. "How are you?" she asked, and I could hear the genuine concern in her voice. "I'm managing. Security job. Small apartment. Simple life." She flinched. "Thomas, I'm so sorry. About everything. About the divorce. About David. About... You did what you had to do. We both did." "No, you don't understand. I need to tell you something." She looked around the coffee shop, then leaned in. "David's sick. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. He has maybe 3 months." I should have felt satisfaction. Vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. "I'm sorry to hear that. He's been different since the diagnosis. Guilty. He talks in his sleep about you, about what really happened. Thomas, I think he wants to confess." "Confess?" "Karen, it's been 12 years. What good would that do now?" "It would clear your name. You could get your conviction overturned. Maybe get compensation for wrongful imprisonment." I laughed bitterly. With what proof? His deathbed confession? That's not enough for the courts. He has documents, evidence he's kept hidden all these years. I've seen some of it in his office. I think he's been too guilty to destroy it. We talked for 2 hours. Karen told me everything, how David had courted her deliberately, how he'd seemed like a kind man trying to help his former partner's abandoned wife, how she'd only later realized he had feelings for her, how the marriage had been comfortable but cold, how David had become more distant and secretive as the years passed. Did you love him? I had to ask. She was quiet for a long time. I tried to. He wasn't a bad husband. But no, not the way I loved you. I'm sorry, Thomas. I should have waited, should have believed in you more. I told you to move on. You did what I asked. I made the wrong choice. David Chen died on May 3rd, 2024. Heart attack in his sleep. The cancer had been hard on his heart, the doctor said. Karen called me the morning it happened. He left instructions. There's a will reading. You're mentioned in it. Why would I be in his will? Just come, please. The attorney said it's important, which brought me back to this conference room, listening to my former partner's voice from beyond the grave. I'm not asking for forgiveness, David's recording continued. What I did was unforgivable. I stole from our company. I framed my best friend. I let him go to prison for my crimes. And then, to compound my sins, I took his wife. Elizabeth stood up abruptly. Turn that off. This is ridiculous. David was obviously not in his right mind when— Sit down, Mrs. Chen, the attorney said firmly. These are legal instructions from your late husband. You're required to hear them. Elizabeth remained standing, trembling with rage. Jennifer had gone white. David's voice continued. The truth is, I was in love with Elizabeth long before 2012. She worked in our accounting department. We began an affair in 2010. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was betraying Thomas's trust, betraying my own wife. But I couldn't stop myself. By 2012, Elizabeth and I had a plan. She helped me create the shell companies, helped me route the funds, helped me doctor the records to implicate Thomas. We were going to take the money and disappear, start over somewhere else. But then the SEC investigation started earlier than we expected. We had to improvise. So I framed Thomas, used his credentials, made it look like he'd been stealing for years. It worked better than we could have imagined. And when he took the plea deal to protect Karen, I knew I'd won completely. The money is still hidden, by the way. $47 million in accounts Elizabeth and I established in 2012. We've been living off the interest for 12 years, while I played the role of successful CEO. The company was actually struggling after I stole those funds. We've been barely profitable since 2015, despite what the public reports say. The attorney paused the recording. Elizabeth had sat down again, her face ashen. Mrs. Chen, did you know about this? I'm not answering any questions without my own attorney present. That's your right. But I should inform you that Mr. Chen provided specific instructions for this eventuality as well. He handed her a sealed envelope. These are the locations and access codes to all the accounts containing the embezzled funds. He also left a full written confession with supporting documentation that has been submitted to the FBI and the SEC as of 9 a.m. this morning. Elizabeth's hands were shaking as she opened the envelope. The attorney turned to me. Mr. Morrison, I'm very sorry for what you've been through. Mr. Chen left specific instructions regarding his estate. Would you like me to continue with the will reading? I nodded, unable to speak. To Elizabeth Chen, my legal wife, the attorney read, I leave the house in Madison Park and its contents, as well as our personal vehicles. I also leave you $1 for each of the 12 years Thomas Morrison spent in prison because of my lies. That's $12 total, Elizabeth. I hope you choke on it. To my daughter Jennifer, I leave $50,000, enough to start over, but not enough to coast through life on my crimes. To Thomas Morrison, I leave controlling interest in TechVantage Solutions, 62% of all shares. I leave him the documented evidence of my embezzlement and fraud. I leave him my full confession, notarized and witnessed. I leave him my apology, insufficient though it is. And Thomas, I leave you something else. Something I should have told you 12 years ago. Your wife Karen never stopped loving you. She never wanted to divorce you. She never wanted to marry me. I manipulated her, lied to her, made her think you wanted her to move on. I showed her forged letters supposedly from you, telling her to find happiness with someone else. I spent years convincing her that you'd given up on your marriage. It was all a lie. She didn't know the truth until 3 months ago when she found the original letters you'd actually sent, the ones I'd intercepted and hidden. The ones where you told her you loved her and asked her to wait for you. Karen, if you're hearing this, I'm sorry. You deserved better than me. You deserved the truth. Thomas never stopped loving you either. The attorney looked up from the document. Karen was crying silently in the corner where she'd been standing, apart from Elizabeth and Jennifer. I hadn't even seen her come in. There's more, the attorney said. Mr. Chen established a trust fund for your restitution, Mr. Morrison. The trust contains $15 million, meant to compensate you for your lost income, lost career opportunities, and lost years. Additionally, with a controlling interest in TechVantage, you now own assets worth approximately $217 million. Elizabeth stood up so fast her chair fell over. That's impossible. The company is worth $350 million. I'm entitled to half as his widow. The company was worth $350 million, the attorney corrected. Mr. Chen provided documentation showing that over half that valuation was based on fraudulent financial reports. The actual value is closer to $350 million total. Yes, but the distribution is as stated in the will. You receive the house and vehicles valued at approximately $12 million. Miss Jennifer Chen receives $50,000. Mr. Morrison receives the controlling interest and the restitution fund. I'll contest this, Elizabeth hissed. I'll tie this up in court for years. That's your right, Mrs. Chen. But I should mention that Mr. Chen anticipated that possibility. The evidence packet he submitted to federal authorities includes documentation of your role in the original fraud. You may want to consult with your attorney about the wisdom of drawing additional attention to yourself at this time. Elizabeth grabbed her purse and stormed out, Jennifer following her. The attorney handed me a thick envelope. These are the details of your inheritance, Mr. Morrison. There's also a personal letter from Mr. Chen. I'll give you some privacy to read it. He left the room. Karen walked over and sat down across from me. I didn't know, she said, about the letters, about any of it. I swear, Thomas, when I found them 3 months ago, I confronted David. He broke down, told me everything, begged me not to leave him until after he died because he didn't want to die alone. I agreed to stay, but only if he promised to make this right. To tell the truth, I opened David's letter with shaking hands. It was short. Thomas, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I destroyed 12 years of your life because I was a coward and a thief. I let you go to prison. I stole your wife. I stole your company. I stole your reputation and your future. The confession and evidence should be enough to get your conviction overturned. I've also included documentation that should help you get your CPA license reinstated. My attorney will help you with the legal process. TechVantage was always more yours than mine anyway. You were the visionary. I was just the guy who knew how to talk to investors. Without you, the company has been dying slowly for years. Maybe you can save it. Maybe you'll burn it to the ground. Either way, it's yours now. I'm sorry, old friend. I'm sorry for all of it. I hope that wherever I'm going, there's some punishment waiting for me. I deserve it. David. I sat there for a long time, staring at the letter. Karen reached across the table and took my hand. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said honestly. I spent 12 years trying to survive. I never thought about what I'd do if I got justice. We can figure it out together, she said softly. If you want, I know I have no right to ask for another chance. But I never stopped. I know, I said. I read the letters, the ones he hid. I know you tried to wait for me. We sat in that conference room as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows. Two people who'd lost 12 years to another man's lies, trying to figure out if we could build something from the ruins. I walked out of that building with Karen beside me, carrying the evidence that would clear my name and restore my freedom. The man who'd stolen everything from me had given it back in death. It didn't erase the lost years, didn't undo the damage, but it was a start. Justice came late, but it came. And for the first time in 12 years, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over yet. Maybe there was still time to build something new from the ashes of what had been taken from us. My daughter, from my first marriage, I haven't mentioned her yet, called me that evening. She'd seen the news. The story was everywhere. Tech CEO's deathbed confession clears wrongly imprisoned partner. "Dad," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I'm so sorry. I believed them. I believed you were guilty. I didn't visit you once in 12 years. It's okay, sweetheart. The evidence against me was convincing. You had every reason to believe what you were told. No, I should have believed in you. I'm so sorry." That was the moment it really hit me. The full weight of what David's lies had cost. Not just the years in prison, not just my career or my reputation, but the relationships with my children, the trust of my family, the simple belief that the people who loved me would stand by me even when the evidence looked damning. David's confession gave me back many things: my freedom, my reputation, my company, my future. But some things, the lost years, the broken relationships, the innocence of believing the system would protect the innocent, those were gone forever. No amount of money or posthumous apologies could return them to me. Still, as I lay in bed that night in my small apartment, soon to be replaced by something better, I supposed I felt something I hadn't felt in 12 years. Peace, not happiness. Not yet, but peace. The story had ended the way it was supposed to, even if it took longer than it should have. The guilty had been exposed, the innocent vindicated, and tomorrow I'd start the long process of rebuilding a life that had been stolen from me. Tomorrow I'd face Elizabeth in court as she contested the will. Tomorrow I'd meet with federal prosecutors about overturning my conviction. Tomorrow I'd walk into TechVantage Solutions as its majority shareholder and decide what to do with the company David had nearly destroyed. But tonight, I just let myself breathe. Free, vindicated, and finally believed. The obsidian weight of those 12 years would always be with me. But maybe, just maybe, I could turn that weight into something else. A foundation, a reminder, a reason to make sure no one else ever went through what I had. Justice delayed is still justice. And sometimes the ending comes from the most unexpected places, even from the man who'd caused all the suffering in the first place.